Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to another exciting Workies and Service Business Evolution webinar. My name is Edward Medor, Strategic Partnerships Channel Manager with Workies, and I'm super pumped to introduce you all to my very good friend, Derrek Hofrichter from Service Business Evolution. This guy, I think, in my opinion, is probably about one of the most interesting men in the world. He has done just about everything. Not only is he one of the best coaches and trainers that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting in the home service business, but Derrek, tell us a little bit more about yourself, man. I mean, you are always out there doing something exciting.
That's quite an intro there. No, thanks for having me again. What is this, the third or fourth time we've done this together, and interesting things.
This is our third time together, man.
Yeah, a lot of interesting things, from martial arts and fighting internationally to my time working in the government at different points. So there's a whole host of different topics we could go on some other day. But something else interesting, it's math, right? And
pricing.Definitely. I mean, I've been excited about this for the last couple of weeks, even when we started putting our brains together, because, we've been on this like chronological journey together. Yeah. We first had the opportunity to talk with everyone about, how to fill the board with opportunities year round, selling service maintenance agreements. And then recently we had come together, kind of as a parlay to that, talking about how to prevent $0 calls.
Right.
A lot of the times that would be when you're out there running on like a service maintenance agreement type of visit, and now today, I think we're coming full circle where we talk about, if your pricing is wrong, then man, like everything could be wrong.
Yeah. And I know that sounds like a massive overgeneralization, like really everything. Okay. Well, maybe there might be a few things, but let's dive into it, because it really is that if your pricing is wrong, your margins will be wrong. If your margins are wrong, your profit's going to be wrong, as in probably not any or not enough. And if that's wrong, then your compensation is going to be wrong. Not only what you're paying employees, but what you're paying yourself, right? If you're the owner there. And if compensation is wrong, often productivity will be wrong, because compensation is how we motivate and encourage certain types of behavior, including efficiency and productivity. And if all of these things are wrong, the marketing is going to be wrong, because again, where's the money going to be to even market in the first place if the pricing is wrong? If we can't market and we can't pay well and productivity is bad, then hiring is going to be wrong. We're going to attract a whole different type of candidate, whole different type of person. Maybe we do get some of the right people, but if our pricing's wrong, then retention's going to be wrong. We're not going to be able to keep them. And if these things are happening, our brand image and our reputation are going to be wrong. So that's almost everything, right?
That's a whole lot of wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we say if your pricing's wrong, everything will be wrong, it's pretty encompassing. So if there's anything that a business owner needs to get right first, it's knowing what to charge. That's the fundamental piece. So what I would like to do today is actually get into some math on how we could start to figure out what is the way to price. And then also too, I'm really curious. I know this is always a controversial topic. Every time I get into it, there's a lot of strong feelings and a lot of strong emotions and fears and insecurities. And like we kind of talked a little bit last time, limiting beliefs that can kind of all go around this topic of pricing. And so one of the goals of going towards math is to try to remove some of those things. And let's just look at what the numbers tell us and try to go more data driven. But I know some of those other emotions are strong around this topic. And so I'm here for it. I'll keep my eyes on the chat to see what's
And,
going on.
and I will too. And I'm glad you actually said that though, because it just reminded me, I was reaching out to some of my partners, letting them know about our upcoming webinar. And to your point, someone got a little sensitive with me. He was like, well, I don't want my dealers out there thinking that everything is about the lowest price. That's not what today is about. We're not even insinuating for 1 second that you should be giving things away. If anything, we're hoping that you're going to
Yeah,
walk
I think
away.
we're going to go the other way on this.
I need to charge more.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're going to go the other way. And if we just step back for a second, I ran my own business for over a decade. What do we actually have control over in our business? There's really not a lot that we can point to. If you're in a business that it's affected in some way by seasons and weather, you can't control that. You can't control if things break. That where someone's going to need someone to fix. You can't control that they're going to call you. There's things that you can do to influence all of these things. There's very little though that you could point to in a business and where you could say I have control over that. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is to try to actually change the perspective on this, because you do have control over what you charge. You can set that yourself. You can, there's expenses and a lot of factors, but that's all just something that we'll go through how to look at. But this is an area that as an owner or, the manager or the person in charge of this, you have control. So seize control. Take control of something that you actually have control over in your business. And in any market, like I'm in Phoenix, it's kind of funny to think about it this way, but there is somebody in Phoenix who is the lowest priced person. And I, if we just looked at HVAC, there's something like 4,000 to 5,000 HVAC companies here, probably similar number of plumbing companies and electrical companies. I don't even know. But somebody wins as the lowest and somebody is the highest. And then there's a massive broad spectrum. So if we were to think about this and we were to kind of like word associate, if we were to think of the lowest priced company, again, whether the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, what are the type of things that we might word associate with that company? I'm curious your thoughts, Ed, a little bit of, we were just word associate. We don't know who this is, right? But what might we word associate about the lowest priced?
Well, cheap.
Cheap could come to mind. Maybe they're a one-man band, Chuck and a Truck.
Chuck and a Truck, definitely. That one was coming to mind. I don't know. I also think sometimes when I'm seeing the lowest price, like fly by night company.
Okay, fly by night.
Something.
What are we going to think maybe about their customer service? Is this lowest price person probably going to answer the phone when you call?
Probably unlikely. I might be able to get in touch with them today, but if I ever need anything afterwards, like if I'm replacing my system, I got a rock bottom, bottom of the barrel type price. But if I need help in the future, good luck, Chuck.
Yeah. And I see a few people in the chats. Feel free to throw some words. Lack of experience, right? Things come to mind. Yeah, probably good luck with warranties and that type of work or issues. Okay, if we were to word associate the other way, and we don't know who this is, whoever the highest price person is, but if we were to word associate around the other side of the spectrum, what might we word associate about whoever's charging the most?
Experience.
Okay, it's probably a really large company, right?
Yeah.
Probably has a lot of employees. They probably are well known. Right?
Overhead.
Yeah, they probably.
That one's coming to mind too. Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, probably have a very high overhead.
High overhead.
Lots of employees, probably a big warehouse and a lot of vehicles and things like that. They probably do the warranties and they. Who do we think has the most customers? The lowest priced one or the highest priced one?
I think, we probably are apt to believe that it's the really big company,
That's
the more
probably why they're
expensive.
really big, right? They have
Yeah,
a lot of customers. So
yeah,
everyone falls somewhere. I doubt anyone on here is the lowest in their market or the highest. So everyone's in there somewhere on the spectrum. And if you happen to be more towards the bottom end, this is your competition, right? So all those word associations that we did, that's what you're right, kind of competing with and kind of being lumped in a little bit there. If maybe you're more towards the upper end, again, okay, so now your competition is here. So there's another aspect to marketing that I think is really important, and that's the idea that pricing is marketing and how you're positioning your company and the word association, the judgments that people could make about the company, like we just did about these imaginary companies. We were making a lot of judgments. Uh, Pricing is a way to be judged as well by customers. So then we want to be right. And I was kind of waiting to see if anyone word associated, because when we went lowest, right, we word associated cheap, and I was looking to see if anyone word associated when we went highest, if anyone did like greedy or overpriced. I didn't see that pop up in the word association because, and I don't think that when we view pricing, it's not about having our prices be high. It's not about having our prices be low. In my opinion, that's the wrong filter to examine this whole topic through. It's about being correct. And so that's why the largest companies probably need to charge more. It's not that they're being greedy or that they're being overpriced. It's overhead and all these things, like they're probably priced correct. And so a smaller company could be priced lower and also be correct. This is also why we want to be very careful about ever just copying anyone else's prices. Because if we're just, you know, hey, I've heard this before. Hey, I ask, how did you come up with the price for that? And they're like, I called 5 companies, and that's what people were charging. Okay, that's kind of interesting info from a market, but that doesn't tell us anything about what was going on. And so if you just copy someone else's incorrect pricing, that's not going to work. Or maybe it's correct for them, but incorrect for you. So each company needs to come up with their own correct pricing and not worry about, am I being priced too high or priced too low? Okay. So then it begs the question, how do we come up with correct pricing? So we're going to go through essentially 5 things. Do we know our goals? Do we know our data? Do we know what our strategy is? This is an interesting piece to the strategy, because there's a lot of different ways we could price. We could go flat rate. We could go hourly. We could go cost plus. There's tons of different ways we could price. We need to know our math, and we need to know our customer as well. Okay, so let's just know our goals. The typical HVAC, plumbing, electrical company should strive to have a net profit of 15 to 20%. So if we start with that as like the big outcome, how do we get there? All right. So here's the formula. On a service, when we're running service calls, we're going to need to target a 65% margin. If we're doing installs, if we're in like HVAC world and we're selling equipment, 45% margin. Why the difference between service and install? Why a different target margin? It's because we want the service department to cover the entire overhead of the company. And this is usually upside down from how most service companies are structured or built, where they lose money or barely break it even on service, and then they try to make it up with home runs, hit some home runs in the summer, or sell some big systems. But the problem with that, it's the service calls that are consistent, especially if you listen to our other webinars about keeping the board full and selling maintenance agreements. The goal is to stabilize service appointments consistent, and installs are not. They're seasonal. They can fluctuate drastically, and so that's why we don't want to rely on those to keep the lights on and to pay the rent. We want all of that built into what is more reliable, which is going out and running calls. This is another component, the wage to revenue. I mentioned earlier that if pricing is wrong, compensation will be wrong. This could be a whole other webinar about how to compensate people out in the field. That's not my intention, but it does relate to pricing in that we want to look at this 20% wage to revenue. This is our formula for getting to that 15 to 20% net, that the total pay that the people out in the field receive doesn't exceed 20% of the revenue that they generate. So just to use easy math, if we were to, if a technician was to generate $100,000, we wouldn't want to have paid them more than $20,000 there. And then, right, if they had generated $1 million, it would be okay to pay them up to $200,000. That would fall within our wage to revenue alignment. So if we know that, so Edward, is this making sense so far?
I'm tracking with you.
Are you tracking with me here?
I'm tracking with you, brother.
Okay, beautiful. So data, right? What type of data? And the real key tool here for owners and businesses is to have a profit and loss statement, because that will tell them right there if they are priced correctly. Because if there's no revenue, if there's no profit, if there's no margins, especially when they dive in, and if you can separate your P&L by department, by demand, by maintenance, by tune-ups, that's really going to be knowing your data of how off you are on your pricing if you're not hitting those revenue goals. A little shameless plug here. I'm a coach at Service Business Evolution, like you mentioned, Edward. It's not really that shameless because I'm willing to give something away for free here. So if people want to pull their phones out and scan the QR code, kind of like a menu, you can download a revenue calculator to kind of help you with some of that goals and data, just sort of the best you can. Even if you don't do a good job currently of tracking, you can plug in some numbers and it'll spit out for you maybe missed opportunities with the number of calls that you're at, where you could actually maybe be with profit and average tickets if you were more priced correctly and things like that. And speaking of plugs.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I wanted to give a very special shout out to my friends at National Energy Equipment in Canada. So at Workies, our partners are, super important to us. We love our partners. We love Service Business Evolution, National Energy, one of our trained distributor partners. There's a few different dealers that have actually joined us today from the Great North. So just a special shout out to National Energy and Train. Thanks for joining us today. We really do appreciate you.
Nice. Okay, so strategy. The one that I'm the most favored to is to go flat rates with pricing. Again, lots of different ways we could get there. The one that I like is a flat rate for a few reasons. How we price and how we compensate and how we do things, like I said, it encourages a certain behavior. Flat rate rewards and encourages efficiency and productivity. And if you can do more work in less time, you'll make more money. It's a very little simple equation there, right? And so flat rate encourages that because, things like hourly, what does that encourage? It encourages to be a little less efficient, a little less productive, to take more time, to take longer. So there's
what else it does too, Derek?
What's that?
Just personal experience. I think I've shared this with you before. As a consumer, it is my belief that your consumers will actually appreciate flat rate too.
Absolutely.
Because when Ed the homeowner calls his friendly HVAC technician to come over, and I'm staring at my invoice later at 2 hours of labor, but I know for a fact that Derrek was only here for 30 minutes.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
questioning, why am I
Yeah.
being billed for 2 hours of labor? You know
Yeah.
what? Out of sight, out of mind. I don't even want to know. Okay. Just give me the flat rate.
Absolutely. Because yeah, it's a different focus. When it's flat rate, the focus is on the value you give, not the scope of work. So again, it encourages and rewards value. Uh, to your point, you don't have to try to explain or negotiate or defend or get into details about the labor versus the part versus this menu item of thing in there. It's this going to flat rate oftentimes will solve a huge pain point for a lot of companies, which is the text not collecting payment when the work is done. Because it might be complicated, right? It might be hard to actually come up with the price in other models right there. Versus if it's flat rate, it's a bit more of a menu. It's been pre-built. It's been pre-cooked. You can go into Workies, and pull up the price book and just right there, the tech can select this plus this. Take whether you have the customer pay first or pay a deposit or pay, but they're completely able to collect payment and not have this turn into a whole ordeal later on. So that's another huge reason for it. And with it just being like this is the price for the service, this is a value driven type of deal. It is easier also for that technician who oftentimes does not want to have those conversations at all. They want to diagnose the problem, be able to tell the homeowner very simply what the price is to have the service done, and then collect the payment right there and have that be an easy operation.
Yeah.
It's easier to track because now we don't need to track labor hours and have additional methods of tracking a whole lot of things. It's just we did the job and we collected payment. So it makes things more consistent. It protects the margins. And it doesn't require constant supervision to make sure that, hey, did the tech charge for this part? Did they charge for that little piece of material? Did they charge enough hours? That type of constant supervision is a lot of work. Or, if the technician always has to call the office in order to get a price, that's not convenient. And you mentioned this for the consumer. That's not convenient versus just being able to, pull up your tablet, open up your software, boom, and show the customer. It's consistent. If you called somebody, if you called me tomorrow, you called me yesterday, or if I went to your neighbor, it's always going to be the same price for this service. And there's a lot of confidence that gives the consumer.
So I wanted to ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
I've actually talked to HVAC contractors before where they say, no, time and materials, that's
Time and
where it's at.
materials.
Like, why would you want to continue to do time and materials as opposed to flat rate pricing?
So there's pros and cons to everything. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of ways to be successful. The route that I go is the one that's going to give us the likeliest chance. If you want to go the time and material route, the pro to it is you can make sure that every single job gets you exactly, because the con of flat rate is there will be some times where there are some unexpected things and that flat rate didn't foresee those in there, but the price is still the price, right? There was just something all rusted out and it took longer to remove it. And, oops, we didn't have that part. We got to drive and go pick it up. We didn't include that time in there. So there will be some times in the flat rate where there will be some outliers and other times where we don't quite hit the margins in there because the price is always the price. So the pro on time and material is that when we're each scope of work and we're pricing each job individually, we can always kind of maybe foresee those little things. But when we back out and we look out over the course of a whole year and the thousands of calls we might run, the flat rate evens itself out. Because for the the few outliers where it doesn't work, there's way more times though where we were more productive and we kind of outworked the flat rate. It's a great question. It's a great conversation. There's pros and cons to everything, right? So inside of a flat rate, we need to know our math. this is where this is probably step one where a lot of companies are being incorrect with their pricing, is that they have an incorrect billable hour as part of their equation inside of the flat rate. If I'm meeting with a company, I ask them like, hey, what is your billable hour? Oftentimes I'll hear $100, $120, $150, and I already know the pricing is wrong. Okay, so the way that we can do some math here on figuring this out, and for everyone listening, you can kind of give you a gauge here. You can do the math along with me. What we're going to do, I'm going to do the equation, but then I'll do an example that shows the work. I remember that from school, right? And where you can't just come up with the answer, you got to show your work also.
I like examples, man. I'm
Yeah,
from Missouri. Show me. Show me.
absolutely. So the formula is you take your highest paid tech, you take their hourly rate, you times it by the 40 hours of the working week. I mentioned before the wage to revenue, that gives us our goal. So we calculate if we're going to pay out X, what do we need back? And then we're going to divide that by productivity. And so I know that is just like, what? So let's do an example. So for an example, let's say our highest paid tech makes $30 an hour. So 30 times 40 gives us 1,200. So if we pay this tech 1,200, how much revenue are we going to need to get back from that technician in that week? We have a math for that. The wage to revenue, I mentioned 20% at worst. So if we take 1,200 and divide it by 0.2, that's going to give us $6,000. That would be the revenue goal in a week for this tech. And now we're going to figure out our hourly. We need to divide it by productive hours. Because if we just divide it by 40, we're wrong. Because a person out in the field is not 100% productive.
Yeah, you got drive times.
Drive time. Maybe there's a meeting. There's training. I got to clean my truck. Oops, I forgot that part. So typically at best, a technician will be 50% productive. At best. I think the best I've ever seen is like 64, 65% productive. And that was a very, very special, perfect storm of scenarios that created that. A lot of times when you actually do look into it, for companies, their techs are like 20, 25% productive. So we do need to fix that. Because again, if pricing is wrong, productivity will be wrong. So the goal is to be 50% productive. So we're going to divide the 6,000 by 20 productive hours, and that gives us 300. So we would need a billable hour at minimum in this scenario of $300. That means we know that we're pricing the most important component correct, so that out of the gate we haven't already painted ourselves into a corner to lose money and to be unprofitable. And I think a lot of times when I hear the 100, the 120, the piece that got left out is the productivity piece. That's like perfect case scenario where that tech is productive every hour of the day, which is not the real world. So for people listening to this, they can do the same math. They just need to substitute in their highest paid tech, whether it's 25 or 35. And I will also just give I wanted to show the math, but I'll give a quick little rule of thumb. You can take your highest paid techs hourly and times it by 10. And that'll give you a nice rule of thumb, right? I started here with 30. I did all the math. I arrived at 300. You can take it by 10. I see a comment, Chris, about making commission. And that's great. At our, we have HVAC plumbing sister company in Phoenix, the plumbers, a lot of them are commission only. And so the wage to revenue still works. Their commission is in line with like the wage to revenue. And so we would just do a calculation on what is the highest paid tech making. We would just look at his commission for a week, figure out how that kind of translates to an hourly, and then we would build our hour from there. Okay. So we got to do billable hour, and then we've got to do parts material to make flat rate. This is much simpler than the billable hour. We're just going to add up all the parts and materials that go into that job and put a 45% margin on it. So again, for an example, Jeffrey just made a comment. Yes, Jeff, if you typically run 2-person operations, yes, you've got to price for that. So that is also an area where if we're only priced off of one person's time or not high enough, it's already incorrect out of the gate. So if it's always a 2-person job, we would need to add up both of their hourlies.
And that's why you were saying earlier on that, like, what's right or wrong for one company may not be what's right or wrong for
That's why we can't copy other companies, right? We gotta make it correct for our company. So going back to parts and material, for example, if the flat rate price of something that we're calculating requires a $97 motor, we'll take the $97. We'll put our margin on it. This is weird math, right? Where we got to divide it by 0.55. Anytime we do margin math, we subtract the target margin from 100. And so if we take 100 minus 45, we get 55. So 97 divided by 0.55. So we know we need to be at 176.33. But we don't want to forget that oftentimes there's miscellaneous things that we forget to charge for. Zip ties, bolts, nuts. Like, it might not seem like a big deal on that one call, but if you have 10 techs together running 10,000 calls, that's a lot of money. And especially over 5 years, over 6 years, it could be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've just been not factoring for. So what I like to do if I'm building a flat rate price book is I'll add up the parts and materials, and then I'll add another 5%. So in this scenario, we got to 176.36. Another 5% is 881 on top of it. So my total is going to be 185. So we need to add it all up. So our billable hour times how much time we're setting aside for that job in our flat rate, plus the parts and material, including miscellaneous, plus a service fee. A lot of people forget a service fee. It costs money to take somebody's money. There's merchant swipe fees. There's other things that go into it. It costs money to take money. Again, it might not seem like that big of a deal on that one time, but if we're running thousands of calls and just kind of eating it because we didn't factor in there, this again could be an area where there's maybe tens of thousands of dollars that's sort of not being accounted for, right? So a kind of a good rule of thumb for a service fee is to just do 5% of whatever the labor is. So I'll do an example, Ed, because you said you loved examples, right? So in this whole scenario I've created here with a $30 an hour tech, I'm going to close the loop of this scenario. So let's say it's a job. We've set aside 1.5 hours. So 1.5 times our billable rate of 300 means 450. We already said the parts and materials, it was that $97 motor, altogether added up to 185. Our service fee, I'm going to do 5% of the 450. So our flat rate price for this made up job that I just went through is going to be $487.67. The direct costs are 29%, and that gives us a 71% margin. And some people might be thinking, but I thought the goal was 65%. Well, yes, but remember, to tie some webinars in together, we want to sell maintenance agreements. And as a part of those maintenance agreements, we want to give benefits. This is maybe kind of teasing the next webinar we're going to do, where I'm going to talk about how to build an amazing maintenance agreement. But as one of the benefits to purchasing a maintenance agreement, we want to be able to give a discount. So it's built in. So I can give that discount here if they purchase the maintenance agreement or are an existing maintenance agreement customer, and I still arrive at the goal, which was a 65% margin. Are you still with me, Ed?
I'm with you. I'm tracking.
Okay.
And also for our audience, don't be shy. If you got a question, feel free. I'm monitoring all of the questions and comments, so let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're gonna kind of take this home. So especially too, because if people do have questions, we will have time for it. Okay, so it's one thing to I guess realize I think I'm priced incorrectly. That's like step one, right? Step one is to say you got to admit you have a problem. right? So step one is that, okay, I think because of all these other things, I think it might be priced incorrectly. Step two is to do the math. There's another piece of correctly rolling it out. And this is where like those fears can come into place. This is where those limiting beliefs can come into place. This is where those worries. Here's just my experience. Who usually reacts to a price increase and who doesn't react to a price increase? The group that you will have to sell this to the most, that will require the highest level of buy-in, is your technicians. The group that will not even probably notice is your customers. So the hardest sell on this is to your own employees, because again, I get it. I've been there myself. They're the ones who have to be the frontline interaction with the homeowner, versus your customers just want a good job. They want high value. They want someone they can trust. They want the job done right. And your customers own their own businesses, work in businesses. Everybody's raising prices. Your customers get it, I think, a lot more than techs in my experience. So that's why it's really important to let your technicians also see the math. Let them be a part of, hey, these are our costs. This is the math. Anytime I've walked a room of technicians through this, they have all said to me, oh, okay. Like no one ever took the time to go through this with me. I thought we were just raising our prices for no reason. I thought we were just priced here. They're like, I get it now why we have to be priced there. Like, let them see the math as well. That really helps with that buy-in, because it is the technicians who will have the most concerns about raising the prices. Customers, the reaction is usually not what the fears play out to be. It's not usually where the issue is.
Yeah, I think a lot of that also depends, like, where are you based? Because I'll give you a prime example. In Texas, where I am actually at today, instead of on the
For the
road.
first time on one of our webinars, you're actually where you're supposed to be. Yeah.
But I mean, if you have a problem with your HVAC system and it's 110 degrees, I think we had 45 days straight last year of 110-degree weather. Like, I may not have time to sit and make a bunch of different phone calls. I'm happy you're at my house, Derrek.
Yes.
So if you can approach me with some confidence, and I mean, that's all I really need. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's a big difference if you tell me, well, it's going to be $600 today versus it's only going to be $600. I'm like, please.
Yeah, I can get you up and going, take care of everything. You'll be back to being comfortable, not worrying about it for $600. You want me to get started? Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's the beauty of the flat rate, is that I can actually give a price that where you don't have to worry that, did I just make that up? Would the price be different tomorrow? Would it be different the day before? It's just our price for that service.
Yeah.
Okay. When is the best time to make a price change? It's now. It's always now. Actually, it's kind of like there's like an old proverb, right? When is the best time to plant a tree? And that it's 20 years ago. All right. So, the best time is probably some point in the past. It could have saved a lot of pain and you could have had more money in your pocket, been able to compensate and maybe hire better. The past is in the past. So the second best, like the proverb says, the second best time to plant a tree is today. And same with pricing. The second best time is today. But a pro tip, anytime we raise our prices, it should be a part of a wholesale, holistic change that we're doing in the company to raise our standards, raise our customer service, raise our training, as well as the prices. So this could be, when's a good time to make a price change? Maybe we haven't been using a software. We just got on with Workies. We're becoming more professional. That's given us now real invoices and real price books. We should definitely be raising our prices, right? We are elevating our customer service. We're elevating our standards. Maybe we've decided we're going to start training our techs and letting them attend classes and learn to follow process and really focus on their communication skills and their level of customer service and elevating just the whole brand and reputation, that is an amazing time to also raise your prices. So it's a holistic type of effort of things that can happen at the same time.
You're rolling out a new website, that could be a
Absolutely.
part of the change.
Absolutely.
Maybe you're going to start putting white booties on when you come into the house.
That's right. Everything gets elevated at the same time, because that could be a risk that the only thing we change is the pricing and our standards and our value and our skills and our communication and our customer service, kind of like in that spectrum of how we word associated, the lowest versus the highest doesn't align with where we're priced as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I always like to conclude with a checklist. Right, that's my style in these webinars. So this would be the action plan. Download that calculator from before, so you can kind of get an idea of where your business should be. Take a look at the P&L. See what it says. If you don't have one or aren't looking at one, I would that is the GPS system for your business is the P&L. You can look at a company's P&L and immediately tell if they're priced right or not. Right? Calculate your billable hour correctly. Use a consistent price book. I am a huge fan of price books that are built into the software, just like Workies offers. That's my preference, so that it's nice and easy and consistent, and everyone's using the same. All the technicians are using the same prices. I don't know if I hammered in that point, but that's the consistency piece of it. Set goals, track everything, communicate changes, communicate math. If anyone didn't get a chance before to download that calculator, Kelsey, who's our president at SBE, it's nice that she's on here. She just put that link in the chat, and then go for it. Have confidence, make the changes, raise your prices, raise your standards, raise your customer service, and charge what you need to charge to be able to pay your people what you would like to pay them, and to be able to make the type of money that you need to make, the reason why you opened your business in the first place. If anyone needs help with getting their price correct, I'm a coach. We've got financial specialists here. We would be happy to help you get your pricing correct and help create flat rate price books or elevating the customer service, any of those aspects. If you want to explore
when you sign
that,
up for Workies, Derrek will help you make sure that price book is right.
Absolutely. I've built so many price books. All right. And then we have financial specialists here who are way better at it than I am. They can help with price books as well. So anyone's welcome to scan that and book a little free strategy call there.
And we will send out, as we always do, a copy of the recording. A lot of folks get busy. We get it. Understand. It's nice enough that you were able to join us here today, but if there was someone else on your team that didn't get a chance to sit in, you signed up, you didn't get a chance to actually attend, we're going to send a copy of this out. We'll make sure to get you that calculator, and really appreciate everyone jumping on. Ooh, Derrek, you mentioned before, June 26th, 3 p.m. Eastern. We're mentioning it now, so you can mark that day off on your calendar, okay? We are going to be bringing to the masses another really, really important topic. We're going to teach you how to make sure that your service maintenance agreements are attractive. That's something that can actually be sold, right? Because I can't tell you a company that doesn't want to sell more service plans, right?
Yeah, we'll go through just like
how I build it. What goes into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like today, how I went through how to build flat rate pricing and the components, we'll do that with maintenance agreements, and we'll go through chunk by chunk how to build it.
So, real quick question before Jeff just asked if we're targeting.
Brandon's had a question too.
If we're targeting for 65% margins, our tech represents no more than 20%. Then we're leaving 15% for material miscellaneous.
Jeffrey, you're starting to think the right way. That tech, the wage to revenue, is not always going to be a set 20% in each job. We just need at the end of the week that tech needs to not be paid more than 20% of the revenue they bring in. So there's going to be a lot. They might sell equipment, which is going to be a factor. They might sell IAQ products, which tends to have higher margins on things like that. So it's making sure that each piece of it works for that strategy, so that when we're projecting what the tech needs to bring in, right, we've calculated the correct productivity to factor in there. So you're tracking the right way, though, Jeffrey, on that. Yeah, there's just a few different things we're looking at there. Another really good question, Brandon asked in there, of how do you calculate, it's kind of a different topic, but I'm happy to take it. How do you calculate the salary for a president of a company? So yeah, because they're typically not out in the field. They're not a revenue generator. It's much easier to figure out compensation for the revenue generators. All right, because there's ratios and things that have to work. So Brandon, some of that is a CPA discussion, because I know when the IRS or tax entities are looking at your company, they don't want to see a really out of whack or unskewed salary. So the salary is typically going to be something that your CPA should help you with. So, but I think what we actually want to talk about, though, is total compensation package, because a president should kind of have a salary and then be taking the benefit, if they own the company, draws, or if they have some type of ownership, draws, and a little KPI. If this person is the owner, the goal should be that their total compensation is somewhere around 10% of the total revenue that the company is doing. That doesn't always scale up to the big, huge 15, 20, 50 million companies. But in the typical HVAC, plumbing, electrical, which is usually 1 to 5, 6 million, it scales pretty well. So if you think about a 20% net profit, means that at the end of the year, we've got 20% of the revenue left over. It's not unfair for the person carrying all the risk and all the stress and then all the anxiety to kind of split that with the company and end up somewhere around 10%, with 10% to profit share bonuses, reinvest into the company, have emergency funds, things like that. So hopefully that answered that question. It can get tricky calculating officers of a company. That's something as coaches, though, that we can help. Again, it depends on the company. I would need to know a lot more info about the company to specifically address that question.
Cool. Were there any other questions that we missed, Derrek? Sometimes hard to keep track.
Yeah, sometimes they come in, which I love it. That was a good question. There's a question about productivity. So inside our flat rate formula, we're dividing by 20, because our goal is that our techs are going to be 50% productive. So in a 40-hour week, I know there's overtime and things like that, but in a 40-hour week, the goal would be 20 productive hours. So that's something that we would need to keep our eyes on where productivity is, because our pricing might get fixed and be correct, but our productivity is off now for some reason. So we need to be tracking that.
Gotcha. All right. Well, awesome. Derrek, I'm super pumped that you were able to join us again today. And
I love it.
I'm really looking forward to collaborating with you again on June 26th. Oh, we did have one last question, so we're going to take it for those of you that are still with us. Would margins be different for calculating prices for new construction? Ooh, not even a question for me, but I could probably answer that one. Yes, they would, right?
Yeah. Because it's part of the 5 things we have to look at is, do we know our strategy, right? So this is a strategy deal, because oftentimes in new construction, we're trying to win bids and we're trying to win the business. And so this is
the best margins in new construction, right, Derrek?
Yeah, we're trying to win. So sometimes we do have to beat the other bids. And so there's a whole different strategy that goes in there. Or maybe the strategy is we primarily do residential. We'll only do new construction if they say yes to our margins that we feel like we have to do. But now we're not out there necessarily trying to do a volume. We're just being picky.
Yeah.
The best margins are always going to be in residential.
That's probably different too if you're installing for a custom builder based on the quality of the product that's being installed, Yeah.
Yep. A lot of the companies that come to us here at SBE are have different reasons for it. You know, a lot of them know they need to get their pricing fixed, but it could be a reason of they want to start doing more residential or get out of new construction or get out of commercial because the margins do tend not to be as strong as doing residential.
Cool. Well, excellent. So thanks again. I really do appreciate everybody joining us today. We will see you on June 26th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And
Maintenance agreements.
maintenance agreements. We're going to teach you how to build them. But everyone have an amazing weekend. It's a long one, 3-day
Holiday
weekend.
weekend.
Yeah. Stay safe with your families and have a hamburger or a hot dog for me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.